Okay, welcome to the regular council meeting of the Village of Valemount, May 14th. Thank you so much for coming. So, I always start off with reading the vision and the mission of the Village of Valemount. The vision is striving for a vibrant and balanced community. And it's our mission to serve the community and embrace opportunity. So with that, I'll call the meeting to order, and our first item is to adopt the agenda. Councillor Bullock.
So just to jump in, there's one sub-amendment to the agenda, just to make the public aware of. On number 8.6, Sask Bay Development, there's an additional briefing note from staff to council as part of that, and so just to make the public aware, there's about 20 copies of that briefing note circulating around the room, and council has that briefing note in front of them as well.
Okay.
But it's not an amendment to the agenda per se, it's just an addition to the material on Sask Bay.
Okay. Councillor Bullock, are you cool with adding that? Excellent. Councillor Blanchette, all in favor? Agenda is adopted. Taking a look at the previous minutes, the minutes of the previous meeting, April 23rd, 2013. Motion to receive or any, well, let's get it on the table first. Councillor Bullock, Councillor Latimer, any additions, amendments, clarifications, corrections? Okay, motion to receive. Okay, great. We still have one chair in the front here. If anybody needs to use the bathroom tonight, it's through these doors and down the hall here. If anybody has an emergency, just put your hand up. We'll get to you. Still one more chair down here. So we're through the approving of the previous day's minutes. We're going to start with a delegation from the principal of the Valemount Secondary School, Dan Kenkel. Dan, thanks. Come on up and maybe we'll get you to, we're going to set the podium up so our video man can get it. Towards us. Okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. Members of Council, members of the public. My name is Dan Kenkel. I'm the principal of Valemount Secondary School, and I'm here to talk a little bit about some changes at Valemount Secondary. I know we have a very full agenda, so I'm going to try and move as fast as I can, and I'll be as aware of the time as I can be. First, I'd like to tell the story of decline. Our grad class size in 2008 was 31. The graduation class this year will be 10. School enrollment in 2006 was 150, and we are currently at 72. The retention rates, which is an important number, that's the number of students that are enrolled at the elementary school as a cohort that travel through to graduation. In a healthy school, it sort of fluctuates plus or minus 10% around that 100% level, and we're currently at 70%. So we're losing a high percentage of students over time. So where does it level off? We're predicting at about 60. Now, anything can happen, and with a lot of hope and optimism in our community, one of our goals is just to hang on, and that's something that we've been doing. But in the last 2 years, we have been in deficit funding. Teacher FTE, teacher full-time equivalent, in 2005 was over 10 full-time teachers, and we are now at 7.5, and when all is said and done, we'll be down closer to 3.5. And that, includes partly my time as well, and my admin time being cut, and me being moved into the classroom. So, with a drop from approximately 72 available blocks of choice and opportunity for students down to 31 with this coming year, it's very difficult to run a high school. And a high school model that's sort of based on a population of 1,500 students, to scale it down to 60 students or even 75, it becomes unmanageable and difficult to do, and actually starts to hurt learning, and that's where I believe we are now. So in the last 2 years, as I've said, we've been in deficit funding. We've been spending out of our war chest, something that Don Taylor and myself have been working a long time to try and put money away for a rainy day. That has given us some time to try and build a mountain school, which has had limited success, and is now trying to buy us some time for a transition to something different. We are out of money. So what is so bad about being small? Well, yeah, it is difficult to scale down a model of a school, of a regular high school, and trying to be a big high school that's just small. But you know, we have to try. But the community, staff, students, parents, the expectations are, of course, that you want your kids to have every opportunity. We want our community to have a great school. So we have to look at our advantages and who we are and what strengths that we have. And we also have to take into account that we have to create a school for all learners. University-bound kids, trades-bound kids, skills-based trades, workforce transition kids, and kids with special needs. And those numbers are significant. Why can't we just keep going as we are with the status quo? Well, obviously, enrollment decline, reduced funding, reduced population in our school creates less interactions. It actually doesn't feel like a vibrant school at times in our school because it's empty. I had one educator come into the school and say, "I didn't realize today was a professional day." I said, "It's not." So that traditional model is just not scalable. Student engagement, we see as we have fewer options, we have fewer interactions with kids, we have fewer kids per grade, and just fewer students in general. The student engagement is not what it should be. We have teachers that are trying to juggle huge workloads and huge amounts of course preps. We have streaming, where course conflicts are getting to the point that they're so serious that it limits choice of what kids can take. We have to block mechanics against French, for instance, so you can't speak French and be a mechanic at the same time. Those sorts of things. So, students are already opting out. We have kids that are, taking French online. We have kids that are taking mechanics online. We have kids taking physics online. We're trying to do as much as we can with less and trying to be a big school, but it's difficult. Funding. We're an expensive school. We're the most expensive school in the district. Currently, the way we're funded in deficit spending, my calculations are the cost per student is over $14,000. The government pays $9,000 per student. So we're significantly over that, and it's just not sustainable. So change is inevitable, and to say that we're underfunded, is to say to a school like Nuko Lake that they don't deserve funding. Your funding to, keep your school open should come here instead. So we have to look, provincially and throughout the whole district and look at what's sustainable. As somebody that sits on a provincial body for rural schools, I can say that we are one of the best funded high schools, a small size, of any size, in the province. Probably the best funded. So it's not really an issue of money. It's just an issue of scale. So now the story of opportunity. In the world of 21st century learning, which we live in now, what it looks like and what the government province-wide is moving towards is based on 5 pillars. I'll read them quickly. Personalized learning for every student, quality teaching and learning, flexibility and choice, high standards, learning empowered by technology. That is the direction that the BC Ed plan and the government, bi-party government, by the way, is moving in the education field. So those are things that we do. Those are things that we have to be good at already. What are our other assets? We have a highly skilled and dedicated staff. I'm constantly amazed at what my staff can do and what they are prepared to do for kids. We have high academic standards. We are at or close to the top of the district consistently. We are above provincial averages in our exam scores. We are a place of learning. We are near 100% in our grad rate. That's unheard of. Our Aboriginal population is near 100%. We're working at numbers closer to 50% for our district and province. Something to be proud of. We have healthy, active students. We have low crime, low vandalism. I spend nothing on vandalism in my school. You can see that in terms of tagging in our community, stuff getting broken, it is minimal or rare, if at all. And usually, and if it does happen, it's somebody from out of town. We have low drug and alcohol abuse amongst our students and our kids. We have tremendous outdoor and wilderness opportunities at our back door. And we have talented community involved in our school every day of the week. We have people there, the place is full. This school is a great place. So what are the next steps? Well, my approach is to avoid fear-based reactions, to stop looking at this with fearful eyes. There is an opportunity here all over the place. Sometimes change means getting a push. Sometimes change means having to abandon the status quo. Yes, that can be scary, but you have to embrace change and you have to push away fear. I encourage parents and others in the community to become active and involved in the school. Support our school and our staff. Learn about new ways of learning. Educate yourselves. There's tons of information online about new ways of doing things and breaking away from things like blocks, courses, classes, bells. Meet with me one-on-one. My door's open. When I'm not teaching, I'd be more than happy to have a cup of coffee with you and sit down and talk. And expect greatness, because that's what we have been delivering in our school. And our kids show us all the time. You look at some of our graduates, some of them are even here. Some of you are out there. We produce great grads that do great things in our valley and outside of our valley. So what are we doing right now? We're visiting schools all over North America. I had some teachers that headed to San Diego a couple of weeks ago. Myself and another teacher are heading to Colorado and New Mexico in 2 weeks' time. We have people coming up to visit us from other places. A teacher going to the Kootenays, looking at areas of excellence and areas where cool things are happening, interesting things are happening, and dynamic teachers and educators are looking at the world of education with new eyes. That's who we want to connect with, that's what we want to do, and that's what we believe in. We're also doing a lot of learning online. We're accessing resources online, connecting with educational leaders across the province, and trying to find new ways of doing more with less. We're holding a meeting for all parents and anyone that's interested in the community, actually, on May 21st at the high school in the Valemount Community Theatre, Tuesday at 7 o'clock. It's right after the long weekend. It's going to be an information session. It's going to be the opportunity to hear concerns. It's going to be an opportunity to embrace the future and to try and challenge some of that fear-based reactions. So I encourage any of you that are interested, that have something to contribute, that want to raise any concerns, and start looking towards the future, to come and attend. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Just a moment, if you don't run away. We don't want to extend this too long, but first I want to thank you for coming out And I see where you're going. I've spoken with you over the past year and a half, and before that, and we saw where this is coming, and I really like the approach. I think it's so strong. There is strength here. That our community is small, kids come here and find a level of education that they don't get. They get overlooked in other communities. So there is so much that we have to work on. But unfortunately, we have to go through a crisis. I would hearken it much like the village has. In 2006, the mill sawed its last board. And we've had to figure out what we're doing here in this mountain town. And we've beavered away. And you know, I couldn't believe from 2006 to 2011 that we had made it, that we hadn't abandoned ship. That if you look at the register, if you look at the people from Census Canada, that we'd had the same amount of people living here. So it's amazing. We have stuff to offer. There's a reason people are here. But right now, we don't have the population. We need to get our heads around that. We need to face it. We need to mourn it, grieve it, get over it, and be excellent. Dan, you're doing awesome. I really appreciate the work you're doing at the school and the great work that I hear that the teachers are doing. Did anybody else have questions for Dan?
I have one question.
Yeah.
Is there anything that we can do for you in the school?
I just think, just continue to support as you have done. And we have lots of parents that have concerns, and to continue to send them to me and, you know, encourage the dialogue that's happening on many levels to continue. And, yeah. And if any questions that come up or any concerns that you have, please contact me and let me know. I'm more than happy to come back and talk with you know, future greatness that we do at our school.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we'll just move receipt on that. Okay, Councillor Salt, will you receipt it? Yeah, and then Councillor Bullock, great. All in favor, receipt, thank you. Okay, moving along. No unfinished business, we'll move on to item 6, correspondence for action. We have a letter from Nancy Harris regarding via rail access. This is regarding, what is the right word? Who's been working on this file? Accessibility, thank you. I was gonna say some word from like 1980s and you don't say it anymore. But, yeah. And so the recommendation from staff, or the recommendation from staff, is that we write a letter to Via Rail saying, we want an accessible community. We want to be able to bring people who have, whatever, for people to get off the train here who have accessibility issues. Okay.
I'll make a motion.
Councillor Bullock?
I'll second.
Councillor Latimer? All in favor? Excellent. We've got a request from the Valemount Museum for the donation of a village tent and a Canada Day cake. And council will consider whether to approve the museum's request for the donation of the tent and the Canada cake. And you had an item on this.
Can I speak to this?
Yes, please.
Last year, the village was approached for funding for an upgrade to the museum cake.
Yeah.
And the village did reduce the fireworks budget in order to provide that funding for the upgrade to the cake.
Okay.
But I would hesitate to recommend that we continue that practice or that we fund the entire cake as is being requested here.
Right. It was a one-time kind of
It's a
thing.
one-time thing,
Because we were going to spend that money, we're going to blow it up in smoke,
kind of.
literally. Okay.
I'll
With
make
that,
a motion to
okay. Allow for the
approve,
tent.
yes, sorry, approve the museum that we do the tent and the cake.
Second.
Okay, there you go. Go anyway. All right. Let's call a question. All in favor?
Okay, wait, I just want to clarify here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Did we not just hear about not funding the cake this year?
The upgraded cake,
Oh,
right? Is that correct?
well, last year we looked after the entire cake and they're,
No,
If we
last year we
funded
upgraded the cake.
That's
okay.
correct. And this year they're asking for the entire cake. I would,
Could we make a motion to approve the tent and not the cake and do one or the other, or?
Absolutely.
Councillor Saul?
Traditionally, the cake for the library, or for the museum had been donated by IGA, and it was a smaller cake than the evening. So I know that they had for years been wanting it to be upgraded, and so the village has always been trying to work with them to try and make this a possibility, and so I know
Okay.
last year
That's good to know.
you did do that. The year before, they were able to fund the extra large size cake themselves. So this has been a concern over the years and has been a struggle. So
Okay, well-
normally the one size has already been normally donated by IGA.
I don't want to take up too much time on this one, but should we just call the question, do you think,
on
or
the
we got
table,
further? Yeah, we've got the motion on the table. Or is there a friendly amendment? Is she giving a friendly amendment there to yours, or you want to fund the tent and the cake? So she's suggesting that we just fund Dallas has suggested that we just fund, Councillor Bullock has suggested that we just fund
Okay.
the tent.
Okay. Yes, so we'll find.
I just have a question. Don't we normally apply for funding for Canada Day?
We do.
And what do we do with that money?
We have, there's a cake for the village as well, which, does IGA donate that one as well?
No, the
Okay,
village
so
is
the village
traditionally
pays
paid
for
for.
that.
For the village celebrations, yeah. There's a big schedule and this thing's been going on and this is the way it works. And last year there was an exception. And what I guess staff is saying is we said that would be a one-time thing last year.
There's fireworks.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
why can't we
Very
split the
minimal.
money
How
then
much
for the
is the
cake?
cake?
Yeah, exactly. Why can't we split the money for the cake and have two cakes? The museum has very little
We
funding.
have two cakes.
I know, but have two little cakes instead of one grande cake and one little cake.
You just take the donations from, that are given by IGA.
IGA does donate a small cake to the museum already, so if we want one small cake and one large one, then we're okay. Sorry, I'm not understanding.
No, that's okay. That's okay. It just makes
Okay,
sense to just buy the cake
Just for clarity, what's the motion
with
on
our
the floor?
money.
Motion on the floor from Councillor Blanchette is to fund both the tent and the cake.
Okay, I'm gonna call the question. We got a lot of stuff to get to.
I
So,
seconded that.
okay, all in favor? There it goes. Okay, very good. Okay, moving on to, there's a request from the grad class of 2013 for the request of the use of the community hall tables free of charge. So the tables and chairs, I'll ask you not to talk, please. We're here to conduct a council meeting, so catch up afterwards. There's a request from the grad class to use tables and chairs, tables rather, from the community hall free of charge. The village now has new tables and chairs that are not for use off-site, that was sort of the understanding. But we do have 10 old tables still, we've kept 10 around, so we can use those. And the idea is, the recommendation is here is that we just get the grad class to go to the organizations that we have donated those old, or who now have those old tables. So that would be the curling rink and the fire department. So I'll put this motion on the floor for the sake of timeliness, that we waive the fee for the rental of the tables and encourage the grad class to approach the curling rink and the fire department for the additional tables. Yeah, okay, Councillor Blanchette?
What about the chairs? They don't have any.
I don't think they're looking for chairs.
They were looking for chairs as well, right? Or no?
Oh,
No, just 10
No, it's
tables.
just some tables.
See, the letter just speaks to tables.
Okay. I'm sure we can, if they're looking for old, we put a bunch of old chairs somewhere too. Not here. Okay, so motions on the table, all in favor? Yeah, great. There's a request for the use of the Visitor Information Center and a request for tables. This is for Yora. So, does somebody want to nail this recommendation, or is anybody interested in moving this?
Yeah, sure.
Councillor Bullock?
It is recommended that council considers waiving the fee associated with the rental of these 10 old tables for the use of the Mount Robson Marathon. It's a great event. It is also recommended that council considers allowing Yora to use the Visitor Information Center on the evening of September 6, 2013.
I'll second it.
Excellent. Discussion?
I'm glad it's happening another year.
Yeah, fantastic. Sorry to move things along so quickly, guys, but we've got a lot on the agenda today. I apologize for being hasty. If there's no further questions, we'll take a vote. All in favor? Great. Okay. So the Valemount Learning Center has requested a letter of support. So I'll give the background on this one. At the regular council meeting held on April 9, 2013, council received a request from the Valemount Learning Center to be their sponsor for an enterprising nonprofit grant application. In the request to council, the Learning Center noted that the grant, if received, would be to hire a consultant to complete a feasibility study to expand post-secondary programming in Valemount. It was moved, seconded, and thirded that council approved Valemount Learning Center's request for the Village of Valemount to be the sponsor for the enterprising nonprofits grant application. The recommendation here is that council consider whether to direct staff to write a letter of support to the Learning Center to conduct a feasibility study for a private school in Valemount. Pretty willing to make that motion, or?
I'll make a motion that we write a letter of support to the village, or to the Valemount Learning Center.
Excellent. Councillor Latimer, thank you. Discussion, or? All in favor? Great. Okay, excellent. We're moving on to the reading file, which we normally just do for receipt. Anything you guys wanted to pull up? Yeah.
Are you attending the high school grad?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. I've always wanted to be invited, and now I am. I was there last year, but I had to sneak in. I just wanted to say there's a note of congratulations here from the Village of McBride on us hosting the Trans-Canada Yellowhead Highway Association Convention. That's very nice. So thanks for the shout out for McBride, and we look forward to that. I will say, I'll speak briefly to 7.4, the UBCM 2013 election platform building tomorrow together. UBCM is the organization where all the municipalities go together to find their voice in the province. It's actually an organization created by the province. We go there, we participate annually. They put together a really strong, regarding the election that's happening today, a platform that really outlined what cities and towns are needing from the provincial government. And it speaks to things that direct and indirect downloading of services, and oftentimes the lack of support to provide those services. So a local example is sometimes we find social services underfunded, and the village ends up taking the bag. Can you guess which one? No, don't guess, it's inappropriate. But for the daycare, for instance, daycare is chronically underfunded. So as a village, we've been contributing, we've been subsidizing. Thank you. Don't say anything else. Subsidizing the daycare. At any rate, these are the kind of things that we're facing. I just wanted to bring that to people's, if you go home and download the agenda, it's a really interesting document, and it speaks to our issues as municipalities. So I move receipt of the reading file. A second, Councillor Latimer, and all in favor? Okay, so administrator reports. We have in 8.1 report on street vendors and mobile vendors. This is a very interesting item, and I will get Deputy Corporate Officer Braden Hutchins to speak to it. Are you ready for that?
I am now.
Okay.
Okay, so we've had an application, for a business license application, from an entrepreneur wanting to open up a street vendor business in Valemount. Now, most who arrived a little bit later on time would have seen the street vendor set up here out front, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, the challenge with the processing the business license application, like we might for other businesses, is that our bylaws and our policies don't speak to street vendors. The business license bylaw briefly touches on mobile vendors, but it doesn't speak to street vendors, and our zoning bylaw doesn't speak to either. Now, really briefly, the difference between street vendors and mobile vendors is that a street vendor is stationary, while conducting business, even though they might be on axles, where a mobile vendor will drive from place to place while they conduct their business. So staff did some benchmarking with other communities to determine options for how to address the business license application of street vendors. And challengingly, it raised more questions than answers. If you can see on the screen there's probably 12 or 15 bullet points of all the challenges faced with regulating street vendors and mobile vendors, but very briefly, some of them are: can they be on private property or only public property? Can they connect to public utilities? How do you deal with garbage collection? Which hours should they be open on? If only on private property, where? How far do they need to be from existing restaurants? And the list goes on and on and on. And often there's no right answers to these questions. It's what's best for the specific community. But despite the challenges, there are solutions. And so what staff's recommended to council here is two-part. One is, after receiving the briefing note, to direct the Advisory Planning Commission, if established through fourth reading tonight, to evaluate these issues with respect to street vendors and mobile vendors, in hopes of developing some comprehensive bylaws around those. But in the interim, that council consider approving a pilot for street vendors for the summer of 2013. And if this happened, council or staff would go away rather, write a short briefing note with street vendor bylaw attached, and bring that back to council, which would then enable the entrepreneur to then open up this summer and hopefully open up within the next month or 6 weeks, and so he doesn't have to be out of business. Yet we can do our due diligence in terms of ensuring that after this summer we have a very comprehensive regulations around street vendors and mobile vendors. So I hope that brief description made sense.
Yeah.
Anything to add, or would you like me to add?
Yeah, I just had a couple of comments, and now that you've clarified it, that there can be a pilot project starting before the advisory committee comes up with some information to proceed to a bylaw. Just because I also did some benchmarking with some other communities, and there's a lot of other bylaws already written that are dealing with street vendor and mobile vendors. So my suggestion was the same as yours, to, my idea was to issue a temporary business license, but I don't think that's possible. But until we have a firm bylaw in place that can deal with it, because it gets him operating as soon as he can without having the pressure of pushing a bylaw through as fast as possible.
I'm glad you raised that, because I neglected to mention that one of the things we could also consider, in addition to doing the temporary bylaw, that bylaw, just by the nature of legislative requirements of having 4 readings, won't be done for at least 2 more council meetings.
Right.
But that'll happen after Valemount Days. So we could look at doing a 3-day mobile business license lot bylaw for Valemount Days to allow the entrepreneur to be open for that weekend, and then still go through with the temporary street vendor bylaw for this summer. So kind of along the lines of what you're saying.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, further discussion.
On the Saskatchewan news just last week, there was Regina, Saskatchewan has a pilot project. It's in the 2nd year for mobile and street vendors, and they went into depth about their fees were $600 for the season, but if you want to check with Regina, City of Regina, they've got their pilot project in place for that.
Definitely, absolutely.
I think it's important to note this is kind of one of those emerging issues, so we're not the only ones dealing with this. We'll find a lot of municipalities in the same position we're in, that it's a new area that's being addressed.
We can build on that, and the public will appreciate this. I called up one of my planning colleagues to get advice on this a few weeks after I called to get advice on home-based businesses. And they said, wow, you're dealing with the 2 toughest planning issues that a village has to deal with. So, yeah, it is definitely emerging. But we're looking for solutions that, protect existing businesses, protect neighborhoods, but also allow entrepreneurs to thrive.
I think a pilot project is a really good idea, though, because within that time between that and the feedback from the advisory committee, we will certainly have heard the grievances or the benefits of having having a mobile vendor in town.
Yeah. My offerings on this one is that this is not the first time we've dealt with this. There was a bit of a different situation, but Coyote Cones used to be beside P&V. It wasn't a perfect experience for everybody, but there's stuff that we can draw on from those experiences. And I mean, I think a good thing about the approach is going out to I appreciate the possibility of going out to the Advisory Planning Commission if that's the direction that we choose to go. Yeah. Okay, further conversation on this one? It's a big deal. But,
I think we've got it in a good place.
okay, fair enough. So I'm gonna read the recommendation and I'll ask one of you, or who wants to move the recommendation? Steal the spotlight. Yeah.
That we direct staff to bring the issues regarding street vendors and mobile vendors to the Village of Valemount Advisory Planning Commission once the APC is formally established, and that we consider supporting in principle a pilot project for street vendors within the Village of Valemount for the summer of 2013. If council supports in principle a pilot project, staff would bring a standalone vendor bylaw to council for review.
So in comment, do we have to make a friendly amendment about looking at a 3-day?
I don't think so. I think our existing business license bylaw can allow for that without an amendment from council.
I'll second it.
Okay, great. Fair enough. So we've got a motion that's been seconded. And any other further discussion?
Just want to make it clear then that this will allow the public some time to give their feedback in response to council on this as it goes through the process, right?
That's actually a very interesting question. And it would depend on council's wish and the nature of the street vendor bylaw. And by that I mean, the easiest way to pass a temporary street vendor bylaw would be only to allow the street vendor to be on the side of a public street and not on any municipal owned land or private land. And the reason for that is it circumnavigates the zoning legislation and the zoning requirements for a public hearing. And so it allows the entrepreneur to open more rapidly because we don't have to have that drawn out process. The downside is that it doesn't necessitate a public hearing. And granted, as staff, we haven't had a chance yet to go away and say, is only on the street the best approach? We might come back and say, no, we really need to go through the full zoning process. But what I'm getting from you, Councillor Salt, is that even if we do the easy process without the full zoning aspects, there might still be a need for a public hearing at that time, or some sort of way to gauge.
Way to have the
If
public be able to express their support or non-support of it.
Okay, right, but I think we are thinking about embarking on a pilot project. So I just want to suggest that having a food vendor truck on a pilot thing is not going to turn the world necessarily upside down. And the way that you get into these and draft good legislation around it, I think, is to experience it and go through the troubles. But also, oh, sorry, go ahead.
What I was going to add, so I think which would be a good compromise, is that this will likely go forward in 2 weeks or 4 weeks, depending on staff time. And the public will have an opportunity to provide feedback during public comment at the end of the council meeting. And so, say we do first and second reading at that time, we can get a sense at that point if we need anything further.
Yeah, well, let's encourage feedback on the proposed thing, what people's concerns are, and that can help us in our thing. I guess the point is that if we subject this to the regular process, we'll be well and done before this season is done.
That's what
So
I was
we're being
trying to get at,
sensitive.
is that the public can express during public comment, even if we don't necessarily, like, we don't have to go through a public hearing process because of this. But I'm just encouraging the public that if they do have any concerns, that they do attend a council meeting and express during comment.
Excellent.
Just one more comment. I mean, what Regina was going through was people were setting up flower stands and jewelry stands and newspaper stands like on the streets. So, you know, I mean, you can't just limit it to a food stand, right? So
No.
somebody may want to go out and sell their wares from a mobile truck somewhere. So you have to consider that as well, right? There is lots, you bet.
Farmers market.
That's a great point, and so that's the kind of thing that we'll be looking to the Advisory Planning Commission to think through. But we will also have to be diligent to make sure that even the temporary street vendor bylaw would be detailed enough to cover
Right,
those aspects.
okay.
Okay, cool. So we've got the recommendations, as such have been, give reading, all in favor, vote on it. Okay, excellent. Good, moving along. This is a really good council meeting. There's lots of stuff going on here. I'm not saying the outcome is good. I'm saying that there's lots of meaty stuff in here. Emergency planning 8.2. So there's a massive staff recommendation here, and
Do you want me to set that one up?
yeah,
Okay, again, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at my notes here again. So, the province has an act called the Emergency Measures Act, 1996, and that requires each local government to plan for emergencies and to deal with response and recovery. And to do that, they recommend that local governments put in place an organization or a committee to do emergency planning. Now, how Valemount well knows from last summer that emergencies can happen, and so in light of that, and in light of our current emergency measures bylaw, which is dated in, I believe, 1996, 1998, we have an opportunity to update the way we do emergency planning. Now, fortunately, we have a great group of citizens who meet already on the wildfire prevention committee. And in talking with those citizens and also Councillor Salt, who sits on that committee, we've discussed the possibility of increasing the mandate of the wildfire planning committee to a broader level to deal with emergency planning writ large. So rail accidents, flooding, I don't know, pipeline spill, whatever it may be. So the first two recommendations are that council essentially dissolve the wildfire committee and in its place create an emergency planning committee. Building on that, it's recommended by the Provincial Emergency Program, PEP, some of you might have heard of, that the village has emergency planning coordinators. And that typically wouldn't be the CAO who has other legislative functions to deal with, but would be staff and often citizens to deal with setting up the emergency plan and helping to oversee that committee. And so we're fortunate enough to have a citizen recently moved to Valemount a few years ago by the name of Barbie Bruce. And Barbie's got experience in emergency planning from her work in the greater Lower Mainland and in the Greater Victoria. And so she's offered to come on board in the volunteer capacity to help us with our emergency plan. I don't have my notes right open here, but if I remember correctly, she worked at the City of Victoria, the University of British Columbia, the Empress in Victoria, and UBC, all on emergency planning, sometimes in a paid position, sometimes in a volunteer capacity. So she's well equipped to advise us.
excellent.
And so the recommendation is that myself and Barbie be appointed as, the term we need to use would be emergency planning coordinators.
Sure, that
A
makes
little bit
sense.
more clear than emergency coordinators.
Yeah.
And then Barbie and I we've already gone and invited all the members of the committee to stay on, of the wildfire committee to stay on the wildfire committee, but they'd stay on board. But we also may look to other organizations, the regional district, highways, RCMP and ambulance, to see if they would also sit on the committee. And then from that, last two recommendations, and I'll stop talking. We'd first need to do an overhaul of the emergency measures bylaw to get that up to date with current provincial requirements. And then we would develop a step-by-step procedure for updating the emergency plan. And those both would be done with the assistance of the newly formed emergency planning committee.
Great, absolutely. I'd just like to say to the Wildfire Protection and Prevention Planning Committee, they've done a ton of work. That plan seems to be in place, and with what they're going to do in order to prevent wildfires and reduce the risk, and then to transition this committee, which is a good committee, to this overall question, I think is extraordinary. I think it's time, yeah. And there's some big there's some work that needs to be done there.
Yeah, and I should add that we're not actually finished on the wildfire work. There's still ongoing stuff, and once the plan's implemented, there'll still be maintenance, and that'll still be a significant part of the committee's duties.
Sure.
But there'll be other issues to address as well.
Excellent.
So have each of the committee members been contacted and approached about this concept?
So via
last time
phone
we
call,
spoke, okay.
in between the conversation that we had, I approached each of the committee members and asked, what do they think? Is this something you'd want to be a part of? Does this make sense? And overwhelmingly, yes, I want to stay on board. And yes, this is the direction the committee should go.
Okay.
So the committee's in favor of this new approach?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Do we want to put the recommendation on the floor? Yeah. Move the recommendation, okay. And we have a seconder for it, Councillor Latimer. And further discussion, or if we've talked it out, we can make a move on it. All in favor? Great. Okay, awesome. We're moving on to, we've got a report from, on Drinking Water Week. And I believe this gives us, does this give me a few burger flipping duties? Or is that this report?
Yeah, it does.
There you go.
I'll share that.
Hopefully we can all.
We're all gonna do it, yeah. You guys flip the meat burgers and I'll flip the veggie burgers, which there will be a lot less of, I'm guessing. Okay, so motion to receive the report?
Can we just read it? Well, we have so much public here today.
I don't think we got time for
I
it.
think we have lots of time.
Go for it.
May 20 to 26 is Drinking Water Week. The village has received $1,000 in grant money from the British Columbia Water and Wastewater Association to conduct activities pertaining to Drinking Water Week. Drinking Water Week coincides with a Columbia Basin Trust water stewardship initiative called Know Your Watershed. This initiative provides funding to educate youth, specifically grade 8s, about local water systems. On the morning of Wednesday, May 22nd, Valemount grade 8s will receive a tour of our beautiful water system. Kim Thorne, who has received funding, training, and educational material from CBT, will lead the grade 8s on a tour of the water intake pump house, water treatment plant, and the sewer treatment plant. Kim will be supported by teachers at Valemount Secondary School and by public works staff. And then on Saturday, May 25th, there will be an open house, which I encourage everyone to come and see our beautiful water facility, for all the citizens of Valemount at the water treatment plant from 11 to 2 p.m. Public works staff will offer tours of the facility. Barbecued lunch will be provided free of charge from 11 till 2. And we're all encouraged to attend the event and help out barbecue.
If you haven't seen the water treatment plant, you really should. It's a very cool place.
We're lucky to have it.
Okay, so move receipts.
Yep.
Councillor Bullock, Councillor Salt, all in favor of receipt? Excellent. Moving along.